back to my old lyrics to deconstruct what I used to get into. So let's take a listen and see how this go. Welcome to Ichabod. I am your host, Be Good. And today we are doing Razing the Bar, where I deconstruct old lyrics that I used to preach and used to rap, my old Christian rap lyrics. No, I don't believe them anymore, but I think what you're going to see today is the passion and the skill that I devoted to delivering this message that I used to believe. So let's take a quick listen and see how this go.
Yo, this life is rough, man. It ain't easy to do this thing. I know what Paul felt like when he said, man, I don't want to preach to others and I myself get disqualified. I want to run the whole race that's set before me. You gotta press.
Lord, put a song in my heart too. Be the rhythm that I march to, towards you. Keep me warm like the Sherlin with grace as I walk with the wind of this world in my face. This place is not home and I can sense it as I roam the earth. I've learned how
come on into the chat. We're going to dive into this. Yes, this is old school East Coast Christian hip hop. This album came out back in 2004, I believe. So if you feel like you just went back in time, you definitely did. We definitely are going to go back in time today. The album was called The Incredible Walk. And of course, it's a play on Incredible Hulk. And I'm talking about the hardship or the difficulty of living out the Christian life. And that's what the whole album was about. We're going to dive into the lyricism. We're going to dive into the theology. We're going to dive into part of my Christian story and how I look back on it now. But definitely come on into the chat and greet somebody in Reason's name as we get ready to do what we do here. I see a few folks in the chat. Let me see who we got here. Mo Wheat, what's going on? Michael Apple, David DeBow. Good seeing you fellas in the chat. It's about to go down. It's about to go down. I'm going to be putting the lyrics on the screen. This is probably one of the most, not lyrically intricate, even though it is lyrically intricate. It's the most theologically intricate song that I've done. I had somebody hit me up recently asking me to do this song. I had other people ask me to do it for the last maybe like year or so. People have been saying, hey, could you ever like go back and revisit this song? And then just the other day, somebody else hit me up and said, hey, I'm still a believer. And this song of yours, like even when I'm doubting, even when I'm ready to call it quits, this song of yours is what's keeping me actually in the faith. And so I'm like, damn, I got songs out here that are actually helping believers to stay strong in the faith. And so what I want to do is I want to actually talk about, what happened to the camera? I want to actually talk about why I think this song, why it means so much to people, why it meant so much to me at the time, and how I think we can outthink songs like this and messages like this. David said, I'm glad I had a chance to find this song on YouTube this morning. I hadn't listened to it in forever. Yeah. So what were you, as you listen to it now from the standpoint that you have as a deconvert, what were your thoughts on going back and listening to this 20-year-old classic that was encouraging Christians? The song is called Press On, Continue in the Faith, no matter how difficult it is. We're about to get into the bars in a second. I'm just giving folks a few more minutes to come on in and join us in the chat. But yeah, let me know how it hits you as you listen to it 2 decades after its release and some time after your own deconversion. So I'm going to put the song back on and we're going to start from the first verse. I'm thinking what we'll probably do is listen to each verse. We're going to listen to verse 1, pull up the lyrics, and then deconstruct. And then we'll listen to verse 2, pull up the lyrics, and then deconstruct. And then we'll do the same thing with verse 3. And there's short verses, but they're so packed with with theology that I think it's going to actually be a very rich discussion. David said, honestly, I still really like it. My turn away from Christian theology doesn't spoil it for me. That's what's up. Well, let's see what it does as we go into the song. So here we go. I'll pull it back up and start it not from the very beginning, but just from the beginning of the verse. Michael Beverly says, time for a rap battle with a Christian. I don't know if you guys watch Justin from Deconstruction Zone, but I saw the title of one of his videos is Christian rap battles me or something like that. So I'll put that in my watch list. I'm gonna go check out Justin's video and see what he's doing. Shout out to Deconstruction Zone. If you're not checking out that channel, it's he's killing it right now. So definitely go check out Justin and check out Michael Beverly. Michael, did you drop the video that we did yet, or should I not even talk about that? I don't want to spoil. Maybe I did just spoil it, but check out Michael Beverly's channel too if you're not up on Michael Beverly's channel, doing great work helping people to deconstruct from the BS. Kim Mitchell, what's good? All right, Mike says they're coming out soon. Yeah, so me and Mike, I'm part of a series that Michael is doing, responding to Christian apologists, doing slavery in the Bible apologists, apologetics. And so that'll be coming up soon. All right, let's go to the verse and see what old fanatic had to say.
I want to run the whole race that's set before me. You gotta press.
Lord, put a song in my heart too. Be the rhythm that I march to, towards you. Keep me warm like the Sherlin with grace as I walk with the wind of this world in my face. This place is not home and I can sense it as I roam the earth. I've learned how to pitch my tent quick, then break it down, taking it down a notch. May I be found to be faithful, safely counted in your flock. Earth is not a safe place to wander. Many of the faith-based lay waylaid and conquered, mainly cause they traded your honor for created things. Being fond of these things, kind of trying to have two gods fooling, but you're not fooled and you're not cool with pseudo gods dueling and trying to bump you for your space. They get in front of you, then have us front on you to your face. I pray for all the soldiers who've fallen from so strong in their walk to no longer even crawling. And I'm not looking down from so high, cause I know that they, but by the grace of God, would go and probably have, I'd probably crash if it wasn't for your grace covering all my mistakes and other flaws. Lord, teach me to learn to love you, Lord, like the writer of the Psalm 119 and other songs. Press on, yes, on, press, we must press on, press.
All right. So you get a little taste of the kind of artist that I was. I was not a slouch with the pen. When it was time for me to put lyrics together, I went into my bag. I didn't really, when I say I wasn't a slouch with the pen, I never wrote lyrics down. I wasn't the type I had a pen and pad. All of my lyrics were written in my head. And a lot of my raps as a Christian were me trying to teach myself. I basically was discipling myself through lyrics. And so if there was ever a principle that I was trying to teach myself, I would say it, I would make it rhyme with another principle, and then I would just go back to the beginning and just keep adding on and saying it again and then adding more to it and starting over and say it again and adding more to it. So it got longer each time I was trying to preach these messages to myself. So even when you hear me say you in a lot of my lyrics, the you is actually me. I have a line in one of my songs called Triangles where I say, sometimes I might say you and mean me, but if I mean you, it just no. What is it? Sometimes I might say me but mean you, but if I say you, it just might apply to me too. So even in my lyrics, I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to you through me, if that makes any sense at all. So I'm putting these lyrics together, just trying to teach myself to live by these principles, and then making it rhyme as I go throughout my life. And then before I know it, I look back and I've got 12 bars. Oh, I had a couple more bars. I got a full 16-bar verse. That's how most of my lyrics were written. That's my process. So I'm going to put the lyrics on the screen, and we're going to walk through what I'm talking about here as I as I tried to preach to myself in this song and then preach to my hearers at the same time. All right, so I start off, the song is basically a prayer. All right. And I'm talking to God. When I say Lord here, I'm talking about Jesus because that's who I believe was God at the time. I said, Lord, put a song in my heart too. Be the rhythm that I march to towards you. Keep me warm like a shearling with grace. If you know anything about East Coast fashion back in the day, a shearling is just a thick winter coat we used to wear. Keep me warm like a shearling with grace as I walk with the wind of this world in my face. In Christian theology, we used to talk about the Christian does not have the wind at his back. The unbeliever does, and this is kind of what I would say to somebody like me now. If you're an unbeliever, the wind is at your back. It's pushing you further away from God. If you're a believer, you're walking towards God, but the wind is in your face. It's not at your back. It's in your face, preventing you. And so I'm sort of just naming the issue here. I'm trying to go towards God, but the wind of the world is blowing in my face. And that wind could be everything from, we used to say there's, I think it's 3 S's, right? It's Satan, it's society, and then it's self, or my sinful self, to add another S. All right, that's all the wind that's keeping me from getting to God, which is a weird way to think about your relationship with God, because what it basically does is the problem that it names is why, if there's a God behind this thing we're calling life, why set the scenario such that all the wind, all the momentum is at your back if you're going away from God, but it's in your face if you're going towards God? Why set up that kind of a obstacle course? Why make life such a hard pill to swallow and a hard dance to catch the rhythm of? I said in the song, I said, put a song in my heart to be the rhythm that I march to towards you. Well, if God could put a rhythm in our hearts to help us march to the beat of his drum, why make it such a hard tune to catch? And of course, the Christian answer is, well, no, it's not that what God's calling you to do is so hard. It's that because the human race has fallen so far in sin, that's why it's so hard. So we have these reasons to explain why the thing that we think God is calling us to do, which we say is good for us, right? Is good for us, but it's so hard to live according to it. So right away from the door, I didn't really know I was doing this, but I sort of was. This sort of implicates God for setting up this scenario where the thing that we need to do in this life is the most difficult thing to do in this life. Keep me warm like a shearling with grace as I walk with the wind of this world in my face. This place is not home, and I can sense it. As I roam the earth, I've learned how to pitch my tent quick, then break it down, taking it down a notch. And that's that imagery right there. I don't know if you're familiar with that imagery. When I say I've learned how to pitch my tent quick, that's not a reference to getting an erection or anything like that. Like in sorry if that's crass. People could use that terminology to be talking about a male getting an erection. I pitched the tent. But in Christian circles, the idea of pitching a tent, there's some circles who use that idea of, you think about Abraham, when God called Abraham to leave his father's house and go to the land that God was going to send him, or even Israel in the wilderness. There's this idea of not having a stable place to be, not having a home, not having a temple, and so you're walking with God through this wilderness and you're always putting up a tent so that you can rest for a while, but you can't really let your feet get grounded there because God's not going to let you rest there. He's calling you to keep moving. So you build a tent, you rest, but then God's like the pillar. If you think about them traveling in the wilderness, God led them, it says, with a pillar of smoke by day and fire at night. So you're always on the move. You make a tent, but then you see God moving, and so you got to get up and follow him. That's what I'm saying in this song. right? um, as I roam the earth, I've learned how to pitch my tent quick, then break it down, taking it down a notch. May I be found to be faithful, safely counted in your flock. Earth is not a safe place to wander. Many of the faith-based lay waylaid and conquered. And once again, I'm naming the problem here. Make sure I got the right screen up in front of you. Yeah, I'm naming the problem here. I'm saying Earth is not a safe place to wander. But once again, why? Why is the God that I'm following, why does he have me in this maze of a reality where it's not a safe place? But this is the reality in which I find myself. Earth is not a safe place to wander. Many of the faith-based people who were like me, people who were faithful. Now, granted, now think about what's going on here. I wrote this song 20 years ago about other people falling away from the faith, or I don't even know if I was talking about them falling away from the faith. I think the majority of what I was talking about here is them falling into sin and or falling away from the faith. I think it was just as much falling into sin as it was falling away from the faith. Really what this song is talking about, if you're not familiar with this, which you should be if you were a Christian for any amount of time, what this song is talking about is it's talking about whether or not a Christian can lose his or her salvation. And so the song is encouraging Christians to press on, because the people who don't press on, I'm going to say some crazy things as these verses go on, but I'm sort of trying to weigh the opinion of the person who doesn't press on. Is it that they fell away from their salvation, they lost it, or is it that they were never saved? And then rather than actually deal with that conundrum, I'm going to just encourage them, you know what? Just don't end up in that situation where it even matters, where it applies to you. Just keep pressing on. If you can keep pressing on, you won't have to worry about whether or not you can lose your salvation, because you kept it. You continued. So I'm telling people to continue, and then watch what happens as the verses go on. Earth is not a safe place to wander. Many of the faith-based lay waylaid and conquered. Mainly because, and I'm talking to God again, mainly because they traded your honor for created things, being fond of these things, kind of. Trying to have two gods ruling, but you're not fooled and you're not cool with pseudo gods dueling. I'm going to say that again because there's a lot in there. Many of the faith-based lay waylaid and conquered. They're down on the side of the road, not traveling anymore. Why? Mainly because they traded God's honor for created things. And this is taken from Romans 1, right? They exchanged the glory of the Creator for created things. And I'm naming that here. Mainly because they traded God's honor for created things, being fond of these things, kind of. Trying to have two gods ruling. And I tell God, but you're not fooled and you're not cool with pseudo gods dueling and trying to bump you for your space. They get in front of you, then have us front on you to your face. A lot of wordplay in there, as I'll say it again. Telling God, you're not cool with pseudo gods, false gods, dueling. So I'm painting this imagery of these false gods challenging the real God to a duel. I'm saying God's not cool. Now think about this. I'm saying all of these things. Look at all of the speaking that I'm doing for God here. If there really was a God who really was not cool with false gods dueling and jumping in front of him, because I say, you're not cool with pseudo gods dueling and trying to bump you for your space, they get in front of you, then have us front on you to your face. If a God really was not cool with that, why do I have to remind God? Now, granted, of course, I'm saying all this to remind myself, but I'm sort of trying to let God know, I know how you roll. You don't like the fact that I have these other false gods battling you for position. But once again, what I'm doing here is what I'm really showing is how active these false gods are, how active I am in either falling for these false gods or trying to not fall for them and continue after the true God. So I'm active, the false gods are active. The question can be asked, where's the true God? Where's this God that I'm talking about I'm trying to go towards you with the wind of the world in my face, and all this stuff is blowing to try to keep me away from you. Everything is active in this scenario but you. That did not dawn on me back in this day. When I wrote this and when I rapped this, many other Christians heard this song and thought, yes, thank you, amen, oh my God, thank you. It never dawned on any of us how inactive stanzas like these really paint God out to be. Everyone in this scenario is active but God. They get in front of you, then have us front on you to your face. Then I say, I pray for all the soldiers who've fallen from so strong in their walk to no longer even crawling. And I'm not looking down from so high because I know that there but by the grace of God would go I. So here I am covering for God saying, oh, okay, so you are active. The reason why I haven't fallen but others have is because your grace has been working in my favor. But what about them? Why wasn't the grace that was keeping me back in 2004 when I wrote this? Why was that same grace that I was giving God credit for not keeping all these other people that I'm saying, but they've been waylaid, they've been laid low, they're on the side of the road, not even crawling anymore. But thank you for your grace, God, that's keeping me from being like them. I'm not looking down from so high because I know but by the grace of God will go I. And now look, 20 years later, and what happened to the grace of God? Because now here I am down on the side of the road like these other people who I was talking about. I know but by the grace of God will go I. Well, I've gone there now. So this active grace that I was trying to sneak in there to try to give God credit for exhibiting, where's that grace at now? And I'm not looking down from so high because I know that there but by the grace of God will go I, and probably have. I'd probably crash if it wasn't for. So I'm actually admitting here, dag, even back then I was saying God's grace was keeping me, but I'm also admitting, but I probably have crashed out in some ways. I was struggling with this sin. I was struggling with that sin. So even the grace that I thought was keeping me back then, I still was wilding out in some degree, whether it was unforgiveness here or pride here. I was arrogant here. I was struggling with masturbation or pornography here. Whatever the sin was, I'm giving God grace for keeping me in the faith, but I'm still admitting, but I probably have crashed in some ways already. So much for grace, right? I'll probably crash if it wasn't for your grace covering all my mistakes and other flaws. Lord, teach me to learn to love your law like the writer of the Psalm 119 and other songs. So I'm telling God, like I see your word here, right? The Bible, I see your law here. That's supposed, if I could just learn to love your law like the psalmist, maybe I would not have been crashing out then. Maybe I would not have crashed out later. I'm begging God to teach me to learn to love the law like the writer of the Psalm 119 and other songs. And I don't know what I thought was going on at the time. Maybe I thought God was doing it, but you see where your boy is at now. So evidently, that grace was not too working. But then the chorus comes in, encouraging us or encouraging me to press on. I'm going to play the last part of that verse and then go into the chorus, and then we'll take it into the second verse.
And I'd probably crash if it wasn't for your grace covering all my mistakes and other flaws. Lord, teach me to learn to love your law like the writer of the Psalm 119 and other songs. Press on, yes, press. We must press on, yes, press. We must press on, yes, press. Would you spare our city for 50 righteous men? Maybe 40. No, 30. 10. Could you find 10 men in our nation who resist the enticements of Satan or the fighting temptations with spiritual fruit like in Galatians, who respond when hearing the truth, whether they like what they're tasting or not? The race is not given to the swift. One must endure to be sure that God has given him a gift. If not, his floor is a constant continental drift. His conscience is his only compass, competent only in shifts. The twist is that I'm confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. And this is not as astonishing as it gets. We're autonomous, yet his honor is sovereign in his intent. What I meant is that his providence is sensed, even if we're abominous and pay homage with just our lips. We must press on, yes, on, press.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of lyricism, if you know anything uh about multisyllabic rhyme scheming, that verse was probably one of the most intricate verses that I've pinned in my head back in those days. Matter of fact, I think I remember when I met Trip Lee for the first time. Uh, we met, I think it was at, I forgot what it was at, some event we were at. He had come to Philly for, and we were outside. He was like, "Yo, man, can you spit that verse for me?" He asked me to spit that verse that I just played, the Christian rapper Trip Lee. And I tried to spit. I had braces in my mouth at the time. I just got finished eating some crazy colorful food. I was looking crazy, and he was, "Yo, spit that verse for me." um, but that is an intricate verse. I'm going to put the lyrics on the screen, and we're going to walk through it. I could have taught an entire class of theology just on that verse, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it. I'm going to try to do it in less than 4 or 5 minutes now, but there's a lot to be said for that verse. So let's pull the lyrics up and see what's going on there. And I've got these lyrics from genius.com. Look, mom, I made it. My lyrics are on genius.com. All right, so verse 2, I start off by mimicking or mirroring Abram's prayer, right? When Abraham, when God told him he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham knew that his brother or cousin, whatever Lot was to him, was in the city. And Abraham was like, "Yo, you can't destroy the city." Abraham didn't just come right out and say, because Lot's there. Abraham tried to, like, "Hey, if there was 50 righteous men in that city, would you still destroy it?" And God says, "Okay, find me 50 righteous men." And then Abraham, knowing like there's probably not 50, how about, and then so he decreases the number down to just one, or just 10 or something like that. I forget how the story actually goes. But really what he was trying to do was get God to spare the city for Lot's sake. And so I borrowed that imagery to present my case in this verse, talking to God. Would you spare our city for 50 righteous men? Maybe 40. Okay, 30, 20. How about 10? And then I say, damn, could you even find 10 men in our nation who resist the enticements of Satan or the fighting temptations? That's a title of a movie from back in the day, but I'm not talking about a group of singers as in that movie. I'm talking about our temptations that we fight. So that's a little bit of a play on words there. Could you find even 10 men in our nation who resist the enticements of Satan or the fight and temptations with spiritual fruit, like in Galatians, who respond when hearing the truth, whether they like what they're tasting or not? And so I'm sort of just going along with the theme, this progressive theme of the Bible of there's no one righteous, no, not one. You can't even find one. That's all I'm saying there. But then we get into the deeper parts. With spiritual fruit, like in Galatians, who respond when hearing the truth, whether they like what they're tasting or not. The race is not given to the swift. One must endure to be sure that God has given them a gift. If not, his floor is a constant continental drift. His conscience is his only compass, competent only in shifts. We got to break that down. So I'm telling God, I know the Bible says the race is not given to the swift. So it's not like, oh, I broke out of the gate. I was saved when I was 15. I went hard for 5 years. I can take my foot off the gas and I'm good for the rest of my life. No, the Bible says he who endures to the end will be saved. So I'm admitting this is a problem. I'm trying to go towards God. The wind of the world is in my face. Now, granted, think about all the time I spent on this channel when I do these Life After Faith episodes, all the time I spent trying to convince even deconverts that it's not about what they do, it's about what Jesus did. It's not about you keeping yourself saved. It's about Jesus' work on the cross and your faith in him. Yet, here I am in this verse, not depending on Jesus, because at the same time, it doesn't say because Jesus endured to the end, you'll be saved. The verse says he who endures to the end will be saved. So as much weight as I want to put on Jesus for salvation, this scripture and the verses that coincide with it, it's not on Jesus. There's something that you must be doing, not just be believing, doing. You must endure to the end. You must continue in belief. And so I say the race is not given to the swift. One must endure to be sure that God has given him a gift. This is ironic as hell. What does me enduring have to do with God giving me a gift? Now, granted, if God gave me a gift of salvation and it's really a gift from God, whether I endure or not, that gift should stand. But what I was actually trying to say in this verse is this. I don't know if you can appreciate the depth of what's happening here. Because in Christian theology, what I'm really saying here is it's not you enduring means you're going to be saved. You enduring means God's going to give you a gift. No, what I actually say, think about these lyrics here, to be sure. One must endure to be sure that God is giving him a gift. And so in the theology, it's not you enduring means you're going to be saved. It's you're not going to be able to be sure. You're not going to be able to have the confidence. I think it's somewhere in one of the epistles of John, right? So that you have no reason to shrink back at his appearance. You might shrink back at his appearance, talking about when Jesus returns. You might shrink back if you're not confident, but that doesn't mean that you weren't saved. It just meant you had no reason to be confident because of how you were living. And so I'm kind of saying here, one must endure to have the confidence to be sure that God has given him a gift. And as long as I was enduring, I had a certain degree of confidence. But it's not just that. It goes on. One must endure to be sure that God has given him a gift. If not, if the person doesn't endure, I'm not necessarily saying in this verse, in the third verse, it's going to shift. In this verse, I'm not necessarily saying if you don't endure, you're not saved. I'm saying you won't be able to have the confidence. Because if you don't have the confidence, then I say, if not, his floor is a constant continental drift. His conscience is his only compass, competent only in shifts. And so I'm just naming the problem here that if you're not doing the active work of living like a Christian, actively testing yourself to make sure you're of the faith and all the things the Bible says, then your only compass to know whether or not you're in the faith is going to be your conscience. And your conscience is going to continually drift with whether or not you're on point today or whether or not you're being faithful today, you're loving like you should be loving today. And so you're constantly in this continental drift of whether or not you're in or out. And this names or this details the experience of very many Christians who they don't have the assurance that the Bible makes you think in some passages you should have. But the reason why they don't have that assurance is because there are other passages that make you feel like you shouldn't feel safe. And so here's the weird thing about this verse, which is the weird thing about Christianity. As intricate as this verse is, as good of an artist, I think I'm one of the best rap writers ever. I really do. I will put my pen, and I'm using pen metaphorically because I never write with the pen, but I will put my rap writing skills up against anybody's. But what you're seeing in this verse is an artist is only as good as the tools and the colors on their palette will allow them to be. If I told you to paint me a zebra, let me take the lyrics off the screen for a second just so you can see me fully. If I told you to paint me a zebra and I gave you a palette with a paintbrush and paint on the palette, and the only color on there was pink, and I said, hey, paint me a zebra, and it's just pink paint. I don't care how skillful you are. You're not going to be able to make me think zebra with just pink paint. Like, I might think horse, I might think unicorn, even if there's no horn, because why is it pink? I might think pony. I'm not going to think zebra because you're limited to the paint that's on that your brush is dipping into. If I gave you only rainbow paint, like every time you dip your brush into the paint, you only pulled out rainbows. Like, you could try to manipulate the rainbow to get, something that's closer to black or something that's closer to white, but you're only going to be able to do what the paint allows you to do. You're hardly ever going to be able to give me zebra if I give you pink paint or rainbow paint. You're not going to be able to do it. You're limited to the colors on your palette. In the same way, If I try to paint an accurate picture of what the salvation process looks like, what does it look like to be eternally secure as a Christian, to be saved? Pejoratively, they used to say, oh, you think once saved, always saved? No, you can lose your salvation. I was one of the people who said, no, you can't. You're eternally secure. And if you say, okay, well, then paint me a picture of what it looks like to be eternally secure. And you say, and here's the Bible. This is your palette. This is your palette to dip your paintbrush in and paint me a picture of eternal security. Well, if all I have is the Bible to paint you that picture, I'm not going to be able to paint you that picture. It's going to look crazy as hell because the Bible says so many different things about whether or not you are eternally secure. So all I'm doing in this verse, in this song, is I'm trying to paint why the picture of salvation looks so damn hard to actually live out. Because we're dipping our brush in the palette of the Bible and the colors are all over the place. I talk about this sometimes. In Christian theology, there's a series of books called 5 Views on Blank or 4 Views on X. And what they do is they get Christians of all different stripes. And one Christian will write a chapter, well, here's my view on that issue. Here's my view. And then all of them will not only write their own chapter with their own view, they will also write responses to the other people's chapters. And then not only that, so if I'm one of the authors, I will have 4 responses to the chapter that I wrote. And then each one of those people that responded to me, they'll have their own chapter and I'll get to respond to their chapter. Think about how crazy it is. Like, is there any other topic in the Bible as important as eternal security? Eternal security is the idea that once you are saved, ED, past tense, it's a done deal. You don't lose your salvation. Romans 8, 28 through 30. Those whom God foreknew, he also predestined and called and chosen, justified and glorified. There's this whole process that if God foreknew you, whatever that means, you could write 4 views on that. Whatever it means for God to have foreknown you, he's also called and justified and glorified. It's a done deal. You're eternally secure. You can never lose it. But why do you have 4 at least? Because they could have had 6 or 7 views on it. They got at least 4 different Christians giving you 4 different views on whether or not you are eternally secure or whether or not your salvation can be lost. This is one of, if not one of the most important issues in Christian theology. Why are there at least 4 different views on how you could even understand that? If a God is behind this book, God is the worst communicator in history. There are at least 4 views on almost every aspect of Christian belief. What does that say about this God who wants to be known, who wants to be understood, who wants to be believed, and yet there's 4 to 5 views on everything he's ever said? That is a terrible way to communicate your divine wisdom to these people that you want to believe you. So now if I had to go back and write this verse, if I talk about the wind of the world that's blowing in the face of the believer, it's not Satan or the society or the sinful nature. It's the suspect nature of the revelation that's supposed to be guiding them on this quest. That's the wind that was in my face. It wasn't sin or Satan or society. It was the wind of the Bible of this makes no sense. And my heart is attached to this. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. My career is attached to this. And I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life believe. That's the wind that was in my face that made me say, before I started studying the Bible in seminary, the wind was at my back because I had a very obtuse and obscure and myopic view of what it meant to call something true. I didn't plan on talking about this, but one of my old heads, he was in the faith long before I was. And when Cross Movement first got together, we used to record at his place. he's in my DMs and just spouting off conspiracy theory type stuff. And I just my response, and it wasn't even about religion. It was about the Rothschilds and like all the conspiracy theory type stuff. Talking about something he just sent me the other day, and I just looked at the video, and before I even thought about going back and forth with him, my only response, I just typed one sentence: "Why do you believe this? Why do you believe this? Like this makes no sense. Why do you believe this?" It wasn't religious. It was just a conspiracy theory that just, why do you believe this? His response was, because it's been documented and verified. Okay. I just Googled. Just a quick Google, just a 30-second Google to just shoot all kinds of holes in everything the video was saying. Why do you believe? But back when I was a Christian, I thought it was as simple as, hey, it's in a book. If it's in a book, it's to be believed. And so I thought the wind was at my back. When I started realizing how easy it was to write something in a book and then disagree with what was written in that book, they have 10 other people disagreeing with that or disagreeing with that interpretation, I had to ask myself, why do I believe this? And why do I believe it the way they're saying I need to believe it? I don't know if I can justify that. Matter of fact, the justification that's being offered is shit. The wind was in my face at that point. I'm still trying to walk closer to God, trying to get closer to God, but the wind of this text is in my face. Did I finish with the verse? Let me see. If not, his floor is a constant continental drift. His conscience is his only compass, competent only in shifts. The twist is that I'm confident of this. How the hell was I confident? As crazy as it is to have this constant continental drift, I said the twist is that I'm confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. And that was based on a book that I read back in the days, a book called The Race Set Before Us, where there was a Christian trying to argue for why we could be sure that we're going to be saved if you're a believer. The twist is that I'm confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. So, and the crux of the book was this. Yes, the Bible does warn people about falling away. And this is what the author's point was. All the warnings in the Bible about falling away is how God keeps true Christians from falling away. So the true Christians are really never in danger of falling away, because while God is warning, it's the craziest thing ever. While God is warning the false Christians about falling away, and they actually do, God uses those same warnings to keep the real Christians from falling away. So the warnings are only real warnings. Like they are real warnings, but not for the real Christians. They're only real warnings for the false Christians. So if you were a real Christian, you were never really in danger. And the way God kept you from ever being in danger was by warning you that you could be in danger. It was the craziest thing ever. But I read that, and it gave me some kind of confidence, some kind of pretzel twisting, theological, okay, I can be sure, because the warnings are going to keep me from falling victim to the warnings. Because the question that all these people are trying to answer is, if you can't fall away from the faith, then why are all these warnings in the Bible? They have to be real warnings. And this author worked out how they could be real warnings, but how the true believer could never really be in danger. It's the craziest thing ever. The twist is that I'm confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. And this is not as astonishing. It gets worse, or better, I would have thought at that time. I said, and this is not as astonishing as it gets. We're autonomous, yet his honor is sovereign in his intents. So much could be spent on that verse right there. Right? I'm talking about God's autonomy no, or God's sovereignty and our autonomy. Some kind of way I'm trying to make it seem like both things are true. God's sovereign, yet we have autonomy. And they're working together. It's basically the age-old debate of free will versus determination or predetermination. But because I made it rhyme, that's the trick, right? If you can make it rhyme, it gives the impression that it makes sense. If you could fit it into the rhythmic timing of the song, and this is why the hymns were so important. They talked about singing these hymns because the rhythmic timing of the hymns, and if it rhymes, and if there's some kind of wordplay or whatever it is, because you can make it make artistic sense, you think it makes theological sense. If it can make musical sense, you think it makes metaphysical sense. When in actuality, you can make, Eminem does this all the time. He makes a bunch of stuff make musical sense, but it doesn't make actual sense. Well, that's what I did in this verse. I made it make musical sense, and somehow let that also count for credit for it making actual sense. The twist is that I'm confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. And this is not as astonishing as it gets. We're autonomous, yet his honor is sovereign in his intents. What I meant is that his providence is sensed, even if we're abominous and pay homage with just our lips. So here I am. I'm going back and forth. God's providence is sensed, even if we're abominous and pay homage with just our lips. So even if we while out, there's a verse in the Bible, right, that says, if we're faithless, he's faithful, for he cannot deny himself. So some kind of way, it's going to work out in God's favor and in the favor of those who are called according to God's plan. This is me trying to make sense of the chaos of this passage. Let me go back and check the chat in case I missed anything. Actually, Eminem is probably not the best example I should have used there. I should have used Ghostface Killer from Wu-Tang. I'm going to talk about, I can't wait to do this. I got a video coming where I'm going to talk about why the success of Eminem disproves the Bible. I can't wait to do it. And I'm going to contrast Eminem with Ghostface Killer. But Ghostface is probably one of the main ones who it made musical sense, but made no actual intellectual sense at all. Let me go back to the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. When I say anything, I'm looking for super chats, because other than that, I don't have time to put eyeballs on every comment just yet. All right, so let's go back to the song. We're going to get the third verse now. In the third verse, I'm going to tell on myself and Bible God. All right.
On us that we must run the race that is confident of this. God warns us and admonishes, and yet his promise is legit. And this is not as astonishing as it gets. We're autonomous, yet his honor is sovereign in his intents. What I meant is that his providence is sensed, even if we're abominous and pay homage with just our lips. We must press on, yes, on, press. We must press on.
Here comes the third verse.
Yes, on, press. Over and over, the scriptures warn us that we must run the race that is set before us. But God informs us, who can be against us if he's for us? The text ensures us that God's grace supports us to stop taking shortcuts. Who can thwart the plan of the Lord? Not death or life can separate those that his hands secure. If it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my neck, I'm not. I'm talking out both sides of the text. So watch and listen to the words you hear. You must muster the strength just to persevere. And even though we compete, what God begins, he completes. Faith is the arena, eternal life is the reward. A great cloud of witnesses stands to applaud all those who win the wreath and celebrate God's grace for those who continue in belief. So yes, we can rest, cause we're blessed.
Yeah, just as
long as we press on, press on, yes, on, press. We must press on, press on, yes, on, press. We must press on, press on, yes, on, press.
Goat Herder said, yeah, you were saved. Yeah, man. I saw another comment up here. Who was it? Mo Wheat said, definitely. He actually, and actually, you know what? I'm probably should save these comments, but I'll say it now since you mentioned this. I hated Ghostface until he admitted what you just said. When he admitted that, I was like, okay, now I got to go back and listen, because as long as he thought he was spitting, I hated him. Once he admitted that he was not making sense and he knew it, I said, okay, I got to go back. I owe him another listen now. Yeah, bro. Like, this is why the Christians, they felt some kind of way when I deconverted, because, yeah, man, like, if there is such a thing as being saved, like, bro, I was it. I believed this. I defended it. I made this my, like, this was my life. This is what I thought reason and logic and, um, I think it's a song, or back in the day we used to sing, Jesus is all my righteousness. Jesus wasn't just my righteousness. He was my logic. He was the grid through which I saw the world. If you can believe what I believed, the way I believed it, to the degree that I believed it, and not be saved, no one's saved. I guarantee you that. Which is why I'm willing to say no one's saved. There is no danger. Like, you don't talk about being saved unless there's an actual danger. And I don't think that there was ever a danger. I still got that on the screen. Hold on, let me remove that. Give me a second. Yeah, I don't think there is a danger to be saved from. But when I did think there was a danger, you better believe I was one of the saved ones. I was one of the ones clinging to Jesus for my salvation. But let's go back and look at this verse now. Let me throw this up on the screen. Give me a sec. Where is it at? I got all these different windows open. I'm trying to get the right one on the screen. Okay. All right, so third verse. I say over and over this. So now I turn from talking to God to talking to the listener. Over and over, the scriptures warn us that we must run the race that is set before us. But God informs us, who can be against us if he's for us? The text ensures us that God's grace supports us to stop taking shortcuts. Who can thwart the plan of the Lord? Not death or life can separate those that his hand secure. And this is my favorite verse that I ever spit, especially as a deconvert. I love this verse now, because then I say, if it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of the text, I'm not. I'm sorry. I said, if it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my neck, I'm not. I'm talking out both sides of the text. So watch. No truer thing have I ever said as a Christian rapper. Because you've got these two different streams of consciousness. One that says you're secure, one that says you're not. One that says it all depends on what Jesus did. One that says it depends on what you do. One that says you just have to believe. The other one says you have to work out your salvation in fear and trembling. What the hell? If it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my neck, I'm not. I'm talking out both sides of the text. I don't know why I thought that was a flex back in the day. I was admitting to the contradiction in the Bible. But I'm acting like it's a good thing that it says these two different things. No, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing that I have this confusing word from on high. The confusion was a dead giveaway that it was actually from down low. It wasn't on high. It was from right down here where we are. And wasn't just one source. There's a bunch of different people talking, which is why they don't agree with each other. So I'm not talking out both sides of the text. I'm talking out of the many mouths of all these different contributors to what I'm calling the word of God. If it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my neck, I'm not. I'm talking out both sides of the text. So watch and listen to the words you hear. You must muster the strength just to persevere. What? Listen to the words you hear. You must muster the strength just to persevere. Why do you have to do that if this is a work that's being done by God? Well, I'm talking out both sides of the text. You must muster the strength just to persevere. And even though we compete, that imagery of competing, Paul talks about these people who compete in the games, these Olympic games, to win a crown. Was it to win this wreath or whatever? And he says, not every all. I'm trying to remember how the verse goes. Not all. That's what he says. Not all the competitors win the wreath. Only those who complete the course. And so I'm saying this to the believers. Even though we compete in this arena, what God begins, he completes. So it's like, well, what the hell? Am I putting the onus on you, or am I putting the onus on God? Yes. Even though we compete, what God begins, he completes. Faith is the arena. Eternal life is the reward. A great cloud of witnesses stands to applaud all those who win the wreath and celebrate God's grace for those who continue in belief. What the hell? So I'm pulling from all these different passages of scripture now, right? You've got to continue in belief to endure to be saved. There's a great cloud of witnesses who are cheering you on to. But what are they cheering? If you're the one who continues in belief, if you're the one who endures, if you're the one working out your salvation with fear and trembling, I say a great cloud of witnesses stands to applaud all those who win the wreath, but they're not going to celebrate you and your effort. What are they going to celebrate? And celebrate God's grace for those who continue in belief. So here you are doing all this work, and then they're going to celebrate God for the work that you did. But if you don't continue in belief, if you fail to continue in belief, if you fall, if you don't win the wreath, if you lose your salvation, if you prove that you weren't saved, they're not going to celebrate God that you didn't continue. They're going to blame you in that case. You didn't work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You didn't. So you're going to get the blame if you fail. God's going to get the credit if you succeed. This is the bullshit. And celebrate God's grace for those who continue in belief. So yes, we can rest because we're blessed. Just as long as we press on. This is crazy. You can rest, Christian. Why? Because you're blessed. Just as long as you press on, as long as you continue. Madness, y'all. Madness. This is some people's favorite song. It was one of my favorite songs when I was there. But now, as you can see, it's insanity. Goat Herder's Guide says, how did you write bars if you can share? Oh, I think you may have jumped on right after I said it. Also, how many accidental entendres did you catch per song after writing? Yeah, because I was writing in my head. I'll say it again now, but if you've already seen his face, maybe you can skip ahead 10 or 20 seconds. The way that I wrote was I was trying to teach myself all these different principles. And in teaching myself these different principles, I would try to say it in a pithy, rhythmic way, and then make something rhyme with it so that I would remember it. And then I would keep saying it to myself. And then every time I said it, I would add another line to it and remember that too. And then start over again so that each time I said it, it would get longer and longer. Then I go back to the beginning and then get longer and longer. Then I go back to the beginning and then get longer and longer. And then that's how I wrote my verses. So yeah, crazy. All right. I didn't mean for this to be an hour, but it's been an hour. So unless you guys have any other questions or comments, but no, you know what? I do want to hear, what are your thoughts on this topic? Y'all talk to me. The idea of if you are no longer a Christian, this is a great discussion. If you are no longer a Christian, what are the odds that really the issue is just that it was you? You're the problem. You should have pressed on and continued to believe and endure, and you should have doubted your doubts when they begin to grow. Like, it's your fault. It's not God's fault. God's still there with his arms open wide. And if you're not a Christian anymore, you should have listened to this song and you should have just pressed on. So you're bad. What are your thoughts about that? And if you're a believer, if you are pressing on, how do you feel about the fact that it's on you? I mean, we say it's on God, but really it's on you to press on. But if you do press on, you're not going to get any credit for that. God's going to get the credit, but you got to do the work in the here and now. I'm going to hang out here for a minute and see what you guys have to say. So I'm typically looking for super chats if I'm going to read it, but this is a question I think is worth throwing up on the screen. P101 says, if you no longer believe in God, what is it that you now believe in? Well, I try not to do the whole believe in thing at all. I try to accept facts that I have to contend with. God might be a fact that I have to contend with. But until I have to contend with it, I'm not concerned about it. Anything that's part of reality, I want to deal with it. Now, there are some things that are part of reality that I don't even have to think about. There are things going on in Alaska right now that are part of reality that don't affect my life at all whatsoever. So typically, I'm looking for facets of reality that impact my life or that could improve my life. If it impacts my life, I have to be concerned with it. If it can improve my life, I want to be concerned with it. If it's a part of reality that doesn't do one of those two things, I don't have to do anything with it. If God is a part of reality that will impact my life and can improve my life, but won't do either of those things until it's too late, like I can't know it until it's too late, I gotta have faith until then, I'm not concerned about anything that falls into that category. If you're going to play those kind of games, I can impact your life, I can improve your life, but you got to just trust by faith that that's the case. You know how many things could fall into that category? I don't have time to deal with that kind of shit. So what do I believe in? I try to not do belief as much as I accept reality for what it is as it presents itself to me. The believer trying to present a God to me is not presenting reality to me. The believer is presenting claims to me. Let God do the presenting, and I'll deal with that reality when I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. So I don't know about belief. I want to deal with reality. I want to accept reality, and I want to have good reasons for the things that I accept as true. That's how I approach life. So I hope that's helpful. All right. Well, in the meantime, if you guys are typing up questions, I want to give a shout out to some folks here. If you are a Patreon supporter, I definitely appreciate you for doing everything that you do, even if it's the least you can do. It definitely helps to know that me taking the time to keep popping up, if it matters to you and you're willing to put your, as Jesus said, where your treasure is, where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Where your treasure lies, there will your heart be also. Whatever. I think that's pretty accurate, right? When you value something, you put your money where your mouth is. So all of the Ichabodians and Ichaphants, whether you're giving $5 a month or $10 a month or even more, I definitely appreciate you and thank you. If you are not a Patreon supporter, the link will be in the chat. Not in the chat, it'll be under the video in the description. Mo Wheat, thank you for the $1.99 super chat, says, too many characters for my quick ration. Oh, I got you. And Mo is a Patreon, so even if you don't super chat, I feel obliged to throw you on the screen. Mo says, if Cross Movement were to receive some sort of lifetime achievement award, ooh, that's a good question. Would you show up to accept? What would you say? Damn. So the question I normally get is, I just got this the other day. Somebody asked if they said if they would offer you $50,000 to do a reunion tour with Cross Movement, would you go? I don't think there's any amount of money that would make me jump on stage and say these lyrics again, because I wrote them with such passion and such conviction. And for the art to be the kind of art that it was, I could not say these lyrics dispassionately. Even when I'm reciting them now, just to talk about them, I say them as passionately as I can, because these songs are argumentation. I'm given reason and rationale, and I'm arguing my way through to a point. So I couldn't get on stage and recite these lyrics and be using the intonations and inflections to try to make these points sound reasonable, because I don't think that they are reasonable. I could not fathom or stomach or countenance me saying these lyrics. Now, here's what, okay, let me say this. If everybody in cross movement were to deconvert and we just did it just for like, hey, just for old time's sake, we all now know it's not true, but let's just like commemorate that this was part of our history, I would do it in that case, because now nobody's preaching it. We all are just commemorating this history. I would do it, but I would not join people who still believed it and then deliver these lyrics as if I believe it. Now, the question of if they were getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. So we almost did do something like that in 2016, where I was I had begun to doubt, but I didn't think deconversion was going to be the end. I thought, I thought God was going to somehow come through and win me back. In 2016, we did a concert in Chicago at the Legacy Conference, and I don't know if they gave us a Lifetime Achievement Award. Maybe it was Lifetime Achievement. They gave us something. I accepted that. Today, if it was a Lifetime Achievement, okay. Sorry for the long answer. I would accept a Lifetime Achievement Award for my work with Cross Movement if it was not a Christian award. Like if the BET Awards or the Hip Hop Museum in New York or some kind of like somebody that's recognized in just the hip hop culture at large were to begin, like I think this should be a part of the Hip Hop Museum in New York dedicated to Christian hip hop, because it actually was a counterculture within the broader culture of hip hop, as small as it was. And we had people like KRS-One told us, like, yo, man, Busta Rhymes, Redman, everybody know about y'all, but none of them ever hit us up. KRS-One is the only one that ever hit us up to actually do something with us, and we didn't even do it. But I think Christian hip hop should be recognized as a part of hip hop history. And if the broader hip hop community was to honor Christian hip hop, I would show up for that, and I would accept that award as just contributing to the culture of hip hop, because I think the Muslims, the 5%ers, whether you were Right Knowledge or Malachi York, whether you were a Hebrew Israelite or a Christian, if you were part of that metaphysical school of thought trying to offer morality and ethics to the culture of hip hop, I think you helped to better what hip hop culture actually is. So I would show up to accept that award. If it was a Christian award, no, I wouldn't show up for that. So that's a great question, man. Thank you. Man, Michael Beverly, thank you for the $20 super chat. Just uploaded our video scheduled for the 16th of May. Okay. Hey, so like I said, on Michael Beverly's channel, subscribe if you're not subscribed. He's doing a series responding to apologists who are defending, this is weird to say, Christian apologists who are defending slavery in the Bible. Michael Beverly is responding to them, and it's a great series. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, everybody he's tapped into is African American, to sit with Michael Beverly and respond to these white, mostly evangelical, if not all evangelical Christians defending slavery in the Bible. So look for that on May 16th. Yeah, he says 8 other Black non-believers joined him for this series. So definitely check for that. All right. Much love, guys. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy my day. Hope you guys do the same. Love you all. Oh, one more thing. For those who are, if you're part of the Patreon, on, I think it's Is it the 16th that we're doing it? For the Patreon supporters, we're going to do our next movie review. We're going to do, I'm not even going to tell you the movies. You got to join the Patreon to find out. But if you are a Patreon supporter, make sure you check Patreon. We're going to do our next movie review. I think it is the 16th of May, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. No, the 18th, May 18th. So you have at least 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more than 2 weeks to watch the movie and take your notes. We're going to record. Should we do it live? I think we're going to record the session. We might do it live. I don't know. I think we're going to record it. We'll record the session. But if you are a Patreon, look for that. If you're not, sign up. And as many people as we could host on the screen, we're going to do this movie reaction on May 18th. All right. Love and light. Get with you guys next time. Peace.